What's going on, YouTube? It's been a little bit, hasn't it? Hello, it's me, Cupid. I'm back again with yet another Skull Servant video. This time, Fiendsmith's out in Master Duel, so we have quite a bit of, extra gas to work with. So, let's go ahead and just get straight into it. This is a opening hand that you will get in our new deck, which I will show you at the end of the video. Please stay tuned for the end of the video if you want to see the deck list. Don't ask me in my YouTube comments, you bozo. Alright, so we're going to just start off with Walls of the Imperial Tomb because this card's very good. We do want to go ahead and grab ourselves an Imseti, and we can put back this extra walls because we don't actually need it. Now we are going to use the effect of this Imseti, placing this Mizuki in our graveyard, and, we can go ahead and get a King Sarcophagus. Let's draw a card as well. Nice, we draw into Domatef, which isn't very good, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter what we draw here, because what we were going to do is put that card into the graveyard anyway. We're going to also send a Happy. Now, as you can see, we have Fiendsmith Engraver. That's a very good card, so let's go ahead and use its effect. Let's grab a Fiendsmith Tract from our deck, because guess what? This card is also very good. Big surprise. Tract is going to grab us a Lurie. Why are we going to grab a Lurie? Because Lurie can be discarded off of Tract, which will summon itself for free, giving us full Fiendsmith combo. Now, before you say, Cupid, what happens if you don't open, Fiendsmith Engraver in your Skull Servant deck? This deck is very good at summoning a lot of cards. We have already 3 Horus monsters in our graveyard that can get us to Fiendsmith combo. We have a ton of mills in our deck that can get us to Fiendsmith combo, and all sorts of other good things that we can do to get to, guess what? Fiendsmith combo. That being said, we are now going to use the effect of our Engraver, pretending that we haven't, used any other cards, even though we have. So we're going to go ahead and summon Engraver, as we do, and we're going to go ahead and make a sequence. Now, the thing with this current deck, and this current edition of the deck, the Skull Servant, Fiendsmith, Tearlaments, Horus, you have a lot of gas to do a lot of things. We do not play Des Irae, by the way. That card is very good, but we don't have the extra deck space. But, if you just sit there quietly and listen, everything will be explained after we get through our combo. Our combo, we're going to go ahead and summon this Engraver back. Guess what we've done? We've gone and we've made ourselves a nice little Beatrice, which is still legal for the time being in Master Duel. Please pray for Beatrice's survival. Because she very likely will not be surviving. So we're going to go ahead and detach an Engraver, and you know what we can do? We can send a white baking from our deck to our graveyard to start our Skull Servant combo. Look at that, look at that. So now we can grab ourselves, what do we have in our hand? We have a white lord, so we're going to grab a white prince and a white mare. Very cool. You know what we're going to discard? We're going to discard our white prince, and we're going to use white prince's effect to go ahead and send our vanilla and our lady in white from the deck to the graveyard. Very, very good. Alright, so now what can we do? I mean, we have a lot of things we can do. Let's go ahead and just special summon a couple of Horus monsters back from our graveyard. Let's summon an Imseti. Let's summon a Happy. Now we're going to go ahead and make the zombie vampire. And we'll use the effect of this zombie vampire to go ahead and mill us some cards and maybe get a special summon. Congratulations, we have hit Tearlament's Rhinoheart. Guess what it's time to do? We are going to now perform what is known as a Tearlament's combo. So now we're going to send a Havness from our deck to our graveyard. Havness effect going to shuffle itself and the Rhinoheart that we summoned back to make ourselves a Kitkalos. Now, what are we doing with this tier combo? Well, in simple terms, we're using it to mill 10, because this deck has a lot of good mills in it. So we're going to go ahead, use tier cash, not add it to our hand, send it to the graveyard, because we do like milling cards. Our deck has more cards in it than our opponent's does. We milled Unizombie there, which is the card that we've been looking for because we already have a Mizuki in our graveyard. Fantastic. Now what we can do with this is we can actually use this Mizuki immediately. So let's go ahead and do that before we try and overmill ourselves. So let's use Mizuki. Summon back our Unizombie. And we have a few options on how we want to do this. So let's go ahead, use Unizombie's effect, targeting a monster, to increase its own, or let's decrease Kitkalos' level. I want to keep my Unizombie at level 3 for now. So, unfortunately, we did mill a vanilla Skull Servant, but that's okay, because we can sort of ignore the fact that we did that and just send a Mizuki from our deck to our graveyard. Now, since we have a level 3 tuner, this actually gives us access to our Cupid Pitch combo. You know the one that I've always done. So let's go ahead and take advantage of the fact that we added Whitemare earlier in our combo, and make a King of the Skull Servants from our deck before we overmill ourselves. We don't need this discard effect of our Unizombie here, so we're going to go ahead and make Cupid Pitch, as I mentioned before. And boom, bing, bop, boom, bam, increase its level, hot damn. Now we're going to use the effect of our Whitemare, using its ability to special summon that lady in white that we banished, as we have always done in our combo. And now we can make Baron de Fleur. And if you pay attention to our graveyard, you'll see that we have not milled a card that we don't want to not mill. What do I mean by this? Well, we have a card in our deck that we really want to add as part of our combo, Nemesis Corridor. Alright, great. So now we have successfully made it so we have enough space on our board to where we can use this kit close and we don't have to worry about milling this Nemesis Corridor. Great stuff. Everything in our deck at this point is a good mill, so we're going to go ahead and use Kit Close to, summon the tier cache, and we're going to mill 8 with this combination of cards. We're going to mill from our side of the field. We hit a White Lord and our copy of Grass. Not very great. We also milled Havness there and a White Baking. We've already resolved White Baking this turn, so that's a little bit unfortunate for us. However, it's not that big of a deal, and here's why. We can go ahead now and special summon this Domatef, and we can go ahead and just make a 4 negation Appaloosa to clear up board space, and also to make 4 negates that our opponent is going to have to deal with. We're looking pretty good so far, right? Well, guess what we also still have? We can summon back from our graveyard the White Lord if we desire to. We can use White Lord to summon back from our graveyard a Skull Servant. We can use a Mizuki to summon back from our graveyard any zombie, but we don't need to do that right now. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to go ahead and use White Lord's effect here to mill as many cards as possible. We have currently 8 Skull Servants in our graveyard, so this card will mill us 8 cards. We unfortunately seem to have missed on our mills, so we're not going to be able to activate our Sheeran because both of them are still in our deck somehow. Not very good. It's okay though, this happens from time to time. Luckily for us, however, we have plenty of things that we can do as follow-up. We have Fairy Tale Snow to give us disruption during our opponent's turn, we have a Mudora to shuffle, and also we have, we have Beatrice's effect to send a Tearlaments card during our opponent's turn. Plus, just basically infinite follow-up in our graveyard. As you can see, we can summon a king from our deck, we can summon a king from our graveyard, we can banish 7 to flip our opponent with snow, we have a shuffler, we have a Mizuki to summon any zombie back from our graveyard that we want, and finally, we can also just use Nemesis Corridor, placing this Mizuki back into our deck to tribute for Colossus. A pretty simple end board, right? Pretty simple, right? So your opponent can't search, you have 4 monster negates, an Omni negate, and a fuser during your opponent's turn that could go into either Rolkalos or Kaleido, depending on which you feel is better. Now, you may think that this board is not very common, and that you don't get to this board very frequently. Let me tell you right now that I have done 3 test hands with this deck, and every single time we have gotten to some variation of this board. In fact, this is the only time that I have made this board in testing where I didn't also end on Rolkalos. Usually you can get to Rolkalos as well, but like I said, we missed our Sheeran mill. Now, as follow-up, we have all of the Horus monsters in our graveyard, so we can summon out 4 2,500 plus beaters. Actually, I'm sorry, 2,400 plus. Happy is only 24. We have, the ability to summon a King of the Skull Servants from our deck. We have the ability to summon a Skull Servant from our graveyard. We have the ability to snow our opponent. We have, Mudora to shuffle back their graveyard if they're making scary plays. We have a Fiendsmith Engraver in our graveyard for follow-up as well. Plus the, the ability to send a card after we equip our Engraver. and we had a Mizuki. And on top of that, our King of the Skull Servants has a grand total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 attack. And we can summon out 3 of those next turn, if we would so desire. So even if our opponent plays through this board, unless they are killing us or putting up more disruptions than our graveyard can play through, which by the way is going to be very hard to pull off through snow, through, fusion during our opponent's turn to make a shuffle, through not being able to search, through 4 monster negates and an omni negate, we have enough follow-up to kill our opponent. So we can just go ahead pass turn here, and I will just demonstrate to you, how exactly how hard it is to play through this board. So our opponent has monster reincarnation. I mean, like, this isn't a real duel, but in the case where this is a real duel and your opponent has things to try and stop you from playing, you could just simply use a Beatrice, detach the Lacrima, go ahead and use the effect to send ourselves a Sheeran from our deck to our graveyard, which lets us fuse, and we can chain block our Sheeran to protect it from things like Ghost Bell. And we can also use this Lacrima effect to put back the Lurie to burn our opponent. All sorts of good things. We have Medora, we have Bar on the Floor to Omni Negate. And then we can also just, fuse for, Kaleido during our opponent's turn to make our opponent have to deal with something being shuffled as well. We can put our Havnus back into the deck so we can use it for fusions, and... again, this is just more disruptions than your opponent has cards, unless they use the card Max C. Alright, very cool. So here, let me just demonstrate some of the follow-up action that you have. If we click Activate Effect, you can see very clearly that our graveyard has, something that will get us to a monster send. We have Summon any zombie we want from our graveyard. We have Summon a Skull Servant from our graveyard. Again, we have Fairy Tale Snow. On top of our big board body that we already have. We have a Rhino Heart that we drew for turn. We can also just click Special Summon to get back all of these Horus cards. We have so much follow-up that our opponent realistically isn't going to stop us from playing. So, very good. We can go ahead and just as a demonstration, let's just use Mizuki, I guess. Why not? We'll use Mizuki. Let's just target, I don't know, King of the Skull Servants that's already in our graveyard to summon it back. And unless our opponent makes a monster with, way more than... It would be 3,200. So unless your opponent makes a monster with more than 3,200 attack, you can probably just punch them per game. And it's a very, very simple little thing. The thing with this deck is that it does not have a linear combo. The ways you get to your combo are, a little bit awkward from time to time, but you can get to this combo very, very many ways. In fact, I'm about to show you a ranked duel that I played. I've only played one ranked duel with this deck so far, but in that ranked duel, my opponent, unfortunately for them, did not open a hand trap, and I opened one playable card. Never mind, I guess I can't watch the replay. Sorry about that, but basically... I got to the board that I told you about, where I also made everything that you just saw and Rokolos. Sorry, I made a little bit of a mistake. Oops. But here is the deck list if you are curious. This is a upgraded version of my YCS Sacramento, nearly making day 2 with Skull Servants deck list, which was Horus Fiendsmith Skull Servant. It did not have the tier cards in it for the nearly day 2 YCS list, due to the fact that in the TCG, Kid Kolos is banned, which means that, you have much less of a payoff because you don't get those mill 5s in this deck. So you don't really want to play the tier cards. So let me explain the deck list and all of the ratios so you bozos don't have questions about it. Alright, so 2 Skull Servant, 2 Lady in White. These are the bricks of the deck. You need 2 of each. 1 of each is not enough because we use, our graveyard for our combo. We need 2 because getting King of the Skull Servants from the deck is very strong. It is a level 1 body, and on top of that, it is a huge beater. King of the Skull Servants, we are playing 3. You could cut this down to 2 if you really feel like you need deck space, but 3 is just correct. With the amount of milling you do, if you mill all of your copies, you kind of just don't play. One White Mare, you search it. It is just a worse version of White Lord now, which, you know, we are on 3 White Lord, even though it's once per turn. But, you know, in the case where you already have White Lord access, you also can get this for a bonus extender. Very good. 3 copies of White Prince, non-once per turn effects are very good, and milling this card lets you send your bricks from your deck and summon a King of the Skull Servants from your deck as well. So you're doing a lot of deck thinning, and you are loading up your graveyard to make a big chunky beater. 3 White Baking, guess what? A card that searches 2 and then discards a card is insane. Why wouldn't you play this card at 3 copies? White Lord, this card is still very broken, just like I said in the last video. Sending cards from the top of your deck to graveyard equal to the number of Skull Servants basically means that this card is a searchable copy of That Grass is Greener. You definitely want to play 3 copies of this card, unless you are playing a very small Skull Servants package. But if you are not, you're obviously going to play 3 copies. I already explained Lady in White, and that is all of our Skull Servant cards in particular. Next, we've got our zombie package, our generic zombies that are generic, kind of. So, 2 Shiranui Solitaire. Why do we play 2 Shiranui Solitaire? Effect to tribute itself to special summon a zombie tuner with 0 defense from your deck. Guess what? That happens to be Unizombie, our main combo piece. Unizombie plus either White Baking, Mizuki, a White Prince, or White Lord is a 2-card combo that gets you to, at the very least, Baron de Fleur plus Colossus and an Immoral Dragon on the field. Now, that's pretty good, right? But if you hit more off of your White Lord mills, you can obviously get to more cards in your deck. Very good stuff. So, yeah, we're playing 3 Unizombie because, you know, it is a level 3 zombie tuner, which is very, very strong in this deck, as most of your plays are going to come through this tuner. It is a very good card. 3 Mizukis because it summons any zombie from your graveyard non-once per turn. You just gotta banish this. Pretty strong. Alright, and that is our Zombies package. Next up, we have our Tier plus Tier affiliated cards package. So we have, you know, the 1 Havness, the 2 Shirin, because guess what? Those cards are at 1 and 2 respectively, and you want to maximize on those users. They're very, very strong. Especially in this deck. If you draw Shirin plus another monster, you can send a monster from your hand to your graveyard to special summon the Shirin and mill 3. And a lot of the time, you don't want your monsters to be in the hand in this deck. Believe it or not, you want them in the graveyard. So, you know, Shirin is quite good for giving you that. Obviously, you're going to play 2 of those. You also have 1 Tier Cash, because the card is limited. Now, this card enables your Mill 10 combo, so obviously you're going to want to play it. Frequently, you're going to be doing the Mill 10 combo off of resolving your Rhino Heart, because you want to Mill 10. Your deck has so many good graveyard effects that obviously you want to have cards in your graveyard. We have 1 Soliak. The card's at 1, and it is a Rhoda for tier cards. However, if you draw it, it's still not bad. You can find a way to discard it, being either off of like your Unizombie, or you could send it from your hand to the graveyard with Walls of the Imperial Tomb, but unfortunately that doesn't trigger it, because this card has to be sent to the graveyard by a card effect and not for cost. You can also discard it off of Tract if you're really feeling spicy though, and there are other ways as well to get it into your graveyard. On top of this, it is a free banish to summon your tier cash if you have it on the field, or not on the field, in your hand or in the graveyard. So we are going to play the 1 Soliak because if you draw it and you have tier combo anyway, you can just set it and have an extra monster negate. Very good card. And beyond that, guess what? We're playing 3 copies of Seamare because it is Rhino Heart at home, and obviously we are going to be playing 3 copies of Rhino Heart because Rhino Heart is a tier combo starter. This card by itself is Mill 10. Pretty good. On top of that, we have the Rhoda to get to our copies of Rhino Heart a little bit easier. So yeah, we maximize Rhino Heart, and yes, we are playing a lot of normal summons, but that's okay. We have a total of, I believe, 11 normal summons in the deck, being the Solitaires, the Unizombies, the Seamare, and the Rhino Heart. Now, is that a problem? Not really. I mean, you just have to decide which normal summon is the best if you open more than 1. And as you play the deck more and more, you will get accustomed to that. So that is our tier-specific engine. However, other cards that are usually affiliated with tier in the deck are Fairy Tale Snow. This card is great in a deck that frequently puts 30 cards into your graveyard. It is a non-once per turn, summon itself and Book of Boon something on your opponent's turn, and if they try to chain Called By, you can just chain its effect because it's not even once per chain. This card is quite powerful, and not playing it in a deck where you're getting 30 cards into your graveyard seems like a little bit of an incorrect decision. We also have the one copy of Mudora. Now, Mudora actually has two purposes in here. If you resolve your Fiendsmith combo and you end up overmilling yourself and you accidentally mill your Nemesis Corridor, guess what? You can shuffle it back. Same thing if you mill too many Kings of the Skull Servants. You can shuffle them back. If you don't overmill yourself and you just mill perfectly because you're godlike at Yu-Gi-Oh!, guess what? You can send this as a disruption during your opponent's turn. Because a lot of decks right now really like having their graveyard intact. So yeah, you do play the one Mudora. It is quite powerful here. And that is all of our tier-associated cards, so let's go into our Horus engine. So, obviously, we're maxing out on copies of Msetti, because, you know, searching King Sark and drawing a card, very strong. We are playing 3 copies of the Field Spell, because opening the Field Spell lets us search Msetti and shuffle a card back from our hand to our deck, which means if we draw one of our bricks, which, you know, we are playing quite a few of them, you can just shuffle it back. And, you know, get an Msetti and start your combo. We're also on 3 copies of King Sark. Hard drawing King Sark isn't the best, but it's still pretty good. Once again, when you want your cards in your graveyard anyway, discarding them off of King Sarcophagus isn't that bad. Beyond that, we are playing one of each of the Horus monsters that summon themselves if you have King Sarcophagus. The reasoning for this, even though we are only playing 1 copy of the Zombie Vampire, is if you get them, they are still extra bodies, which lets you make a bigger Appaloosa or Moon plus another body, so you can go into Requiem, into Engraver, into, you know, into Sequence, and, you know, you can do full Fiendsmith combo. So yeah, the extra bodies off of them, despite the fact you are only playing 1 rank 8, is completely fine. Especially considering, you know, this deck, it doesn't really mind drawing them that much because you have many ways to get them out of your hand. And finally, we have our Fiendsmith package, which is just maxed out Master Duel Fiendsmith. So you're on your 2 Engraver, your 3 Tract, and your 1 Lurry. Now, the reason we're on 3 Tract as opposed to just 1, because we don't have Necroquip yet, which makes the Tract a 1-card Beatrice, is because, again, if you use Tract, you can add Lurry, or you can add Engraver. Engraver can get you a Tract for next turn, but more importantly, Tract can discard anything in your hand, and once again, I have been stressing this the entire video, you want your cards in the graveyard. So discarding any card is kind of nice, and there is versatility to this. And beyond that, we have a couple of cards that are just good to have in graveyard-focused decks. You know, when you're playing 60 cards and your deck likes your graveyard, playing that Grasslook Screener is just an obvious choice, even though it is kind of overkill in this deck. The deck already does a very good job of milling 25 cards by itself, so you don't really need Grass. But, you know, obviously having a win the game instantly button is nice, so we are going to play that Grasslook Screener. We also have Foolish Burial, which is that grass is greener at home. People will very frequently freak out if you use Foolish Burial to send White Baking, and they will use their negates on White Baking instead of things that are actually scary like Tearlaman's Rhinoheart. Especially considering the fact that this deck literally does not need White Baking to resolve. It's just extra fudge points if you can get it to resolve. So with that, our full main deck is explained, and now we have our extra deck. And if you don't already know my combos, I do have another YouTube video that links to that called The Essential Skull Servant. I don't know the exact title, but it is the Essential Skull Servant combo video that you will need to know to pull off the combos in this deck very frequently. Again, they are all the Unizombie combos that you are going to need to know. So, we have Tearlaman's Kitkalos in our extra deck. Why? Because this card is insane. It, like I said, it is banned in the TCG, and it turns your Rhinoheart into a 1-card mill 10 combo. Milling 10 in a deck where you're nothing but graveyard effects is kind of good. You want to do that, okay? One Lacrima, no Desiree. Now, Desiree is a good card. Let me make that abundantly clear for all of you to know. Desiree is a great card, but we do not need Desiree here. Why? It's kind of just overkill. Like, honestly, the board you make is good enough to keep you alive, and the follow-up that you have is good enough to make sure your opponent doesn't stay alive afterwards. So, you only really need Lacrima. Desiree is good, you know, if you want to make that 20 negates board, obviously go for it. I don't care. If you want to make that change, go ahead and make that change. But I think it's unnecessary. We have Lacrima. Lacrima is a broken card, banned in the TCG now, and it helps us to make a Beatrice. Beatrice is absolutely absurd as a card. And the fact that this deck gets a, you know, in combo send whatever you want from the deck to the graveyard in a deck full of graveyard effects, pretty strong, especially when that send whatever you want is a quick effect. So yeah, Beatrice is your main goal. I would say right now your main goal is to make Beatrice and then act like you don't know nobody. Colossus, end board piece. You make Cupid Pitch to synchro into Baron to add Corridor to make Colossus. Simple as that, right? Colossus is a very powerful card and shuts off most meta decks right now. Think about it. If you open Colossus, your opponents can't activate Engraver. They can't activate Snake Eyes Ash. They can't activate, you know, the Sinful Spoils that adds the Hollowed Azamina. They can't activate a lot of the cards that are very, very powerful in today's Master Duel meta. So, making a Colossus is a good idea. It forces your opponent to hard draw the out, and if they don't, you're probably winning that game. Rolkalos and Kaleido, we're playing the full tier package. Why? Because our deck is so graveyard focused, and you have the ability to make a fusion during your opponent's turn. If you can resolve both fusers, you are ending on Rolkalos, and if you are ending on Rolkalos, you can use Beatrice to send to make a Kaleido to make a shuffle during your opponent's turn. Why wouldn't you want that? You know, that is an extra disruption that your opponent now has to play through. Cupid Pitch. I don't think I need to explain this one. This tuner synchro changes level to level 7, and your deck has 3 plus 1, so you know you can turn it into a level 7, plus 3 to make 10. Oh my gosh, Baron de Flor, that card's banned in the TCG, and it's a negate, and while you're doing it, you're searching for a card that makes Colossus. Cupid Pitch is pretty easily explained there. Immortal Dragon. Now, you do need this Immortal Dragon for your combo where you open only the Zombies cards. So if you open Unizombie plus, you know, any of your 3 cards that make the combo with it, Immortal Dragon is part of your combo that's going to let you make this Baron and this Colossus. So you do need that in there. It is not a quick effect, but it is a foolish for a zombie, which you are most likely going to be using to send Mizuki from your deck to your graveyard. Alright, very cool. Beatrice, best card in the game. Really easy to make in this deck, considering you're going to have so many bodies that doing Fiendsmith combo is nearly guaranteed. Your opponent is going to have to do a lot of stopping you to prevent you from doing the Fiendsmith combo. The Zombie Vampire. Oh baby, look at that. Mill 4, special summon a card? Yeah, we'll take that. Especially considering there are so many good special summons in this deck that, like, you know, anything really works. Plus, you know, the extra body, you can summon like this or something and link it off. Very good stuff, right? Now, our Link monsters. Requiem, very obvious, we are playing Fiendsmith. Sequence, very obvious, we are playing Fiendsmith. Moon, very obvious, we are playing a deck that spams the board and we like doing Fiendsmith combo. I don't think I need to explain this to you, but if you need an explanation, please look up what Fiendsmith cards do. Alright, and beyond that we have SP, which we don't actually make going first very frequently. It is an extra disruption, but we do not run IP because we cut IP so we could play the tier monsters, because those are very strong. Who would have thought, right? So, SP is there, mostly as a going second and breaking boards option. And finally, we have the Appaloosa, another card that really should be banned in Master Duel. You know, multiple monster negates, non-once per turn is pretty strong. And as a result, you have this deck. That is very, very strong. It is obviously a going first deck. You want to go first and make your board so your opponent doesn't play. But going second, you can kind of do stuff. Your going second game plan is a little bit different. You want to focus on milling cards and getting out a big beater to punch your opponent for game. Now, I'm sorry that I don't have more replays. I am recording this early in the morning, right after my replays just got wiped out, thanks to whatever update Master Duel just had. But yeah, this is the current deck list, and I do believe that this is currently the best way to play Skull Servants. If you are doing anything differently, very cool, you do you, but I do think that this is the correct way to be playing this engine right now. It is very combo-centric, it mills a lot, and, you know, in a deck that wants to mill, you know, having a searchable card that says mill 8 on it is pretty strong. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you guys tearing up the ladder with this deck. I will be playing more of this very, very soon, because I do genuinely believe in this deck, as I did take this deck to a YCS and nearly made day 2. Unfortunately, my final round against Runic Stun in that YCS was a draw in time, which prevented me from making day 2. But, you know, this is the final form of the highest performing Skull Servant deck of all time. So you should definitely pick this up if you are interested in trying to push the limits of Skull Servants. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will catch you guys later.